Hi, this is Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. As you think about Director Comey's testimony to Congress, here are some backgrounders you might wish to consider. First, does Congress still have a role in investigating Russian interference in the elections now that a special counsel is appointed? Well, yes, we absolutely do. In fact, there being a special counsel instead of a Department of Justice prosecutor doesn't change in any respect Congress's role. We have an independent responsibility to investigate. President Woodrow Wilson once said that it was an even more important function than our legislative function. So Congress's investigative role is important, and we need to pursue it. So if Congress has a proper role, even though there's a special counsel investigating, that brings us to a second question, which is, how do you keep Congress's investigation and the special counsel investigation from interfering with each other? Well, that's not that difficult, actually. You can set up more or less an air traffic control, as I've asked the Department of Justice to do, so that we in Congress have somebody to talk to at the Department of Justice and we'll know if we're going to interfere. The famous ways in which Congress has interfered in the past has been by granting immunity to witnesses, which then prevented those witnesses from being prosecuted later on. But there are other ways Congress can interfere, for instance, by calling witnesses into Congress who are then cooperating witnesses in the federal investigation, but are not known to be cooperating witnesses. To divulge that would probably interfere with the federal investigation. So the answer to the second question is, you simply have to deconflict, and there has to be appropriate respect from Congress for the special counsel investigation, but also from special counsel for Congress's investigation. As Congress goes forward, what we find is that we run into both classified and investigative information. Is there a difference between the two? Yes, there is. Classified information protects national security secrets, and it protects the sources and methods of our intelligence community. Members of Congress can hear classified information. We just have to hear it in a classified setting so that our enemies don't find out about it. Investigative information is different. Investigative information is kept in the hands of prosecutors until proper charges are brought and the trial goes forward. It is not appropriate for Congress to have access to investigative information because the whole purpose of that prosecutorial privilege is to keep politics out of investigations and to keep political pressure out of investigations. And of course, if you bring members of Congress in, even if you do it in a classified room, you're still potentially subjecting your investigation to political pressures. Indeed, having that meeting take place in a private room is probably even worse in terms of protecting the investigation from political interference than it would be if it happened in the plain light of day. So as we go forward in Congress, we have to pay attention to this difference between classified and investigative information. Another question that comes up is the potential conflict between a president who is in charge of the executive branch of government, including the Department of Justice, and a president who may very well be a potential target for an investigation by the Department of Justice. How do we resolve that? Well, the way you resolve it with respect to general investigations is that the Department of Justice and the White House have had a firewall between them for many, many years, and only a very few individuals on either side of the firewall are allowed to talk to each other about ongoing criminal investigations. When the president may be a target of that investigation, the firewall must close up completely. And so you have to trust the Department of Justice, the senior officials, and the people in charge of the investigation to carry on without the supervision of the president. I think that's the right call, and I trust the Department of Justice to do it. Another point to look at is whether the investigation should consider whether the president has improperly revealed classified information. Here, the president is in a unique circumstance. The program for defending classified information in the United States of America is established by executive order. It's the president's program. The president stands at the very top of that hierarchy. And as such, the president is considered to be a declassifier. That means no matter how sensitive the intelligence that the president may disclose, no matter how harmful to the national interest the disclosure might be, he is still immune from any kind of retribution or accounting for violating the classified information rules. They're his rules. In effect, there are certain people in the federal government who, as they speak things, declassify them. And the president is one of those people. Now, if the declassification met other legal standards, like it amounted to treason, that raises a whole different set of questions. But just as a violation of the classification executive order, the president is immune. In the context of these disclosures, you may have heard the phrase code word information. What is code word information? Well, if you are cleared to the highest level of top security clearance, within that general clearance, there are programs that are so classified and so protected that even though you have the necessary clearance, you don't get told about that program unless you have a particular need to know. In that sense, the program is closed off even further among people who have top secret security classification. That's called a code word program. And in order to get access to it, you have to be what is called read in to that program. So people at the very highest levels of government with the very highest security clearances can nevertheless be unaware of certain intelligence programs because they're not specifically read into them. And each one of those programs has a code word that distinguishes it from the other programs. And that is why it's called code word intelligence.